Aloha, friends. Today I have a guest, Megan Devito, a life coach who empowers ambitious women to overcome stress, anxiety, and build resilience. In today's episode, we talk about everything from stressors like the drones flying over New Jersey to the everyday stressors like being a mom. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or anxious, you're in the right place. Stay tuned for a fun conversation with some tips on how to beat anxiety. Aloha! Welcome to the Radiate Health and Wellness podcast, where we explore the vibrant world of health and well-being. I'm your host, Christine D. Ross, a board-certified health and wellness coach specializing in behavior change and nutrition, and author of Discover the Adventure of You and Health Beings. Join me as we uncover inspiring stories, practical tips, and transformative insights to assist you on your journey to radiate health and wellness. Aloha and welcome to the Radiate Health and Wellness podcast, Megan. I am so happy to have you on my show today, and I'm looking forward to learning everything about anxiety.
There's a lot to tell, isn't there? I feel like everybody's dealing with it in one way or another at some point. So yeah, I'm happy to share with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you're right. Who isn't dealing with anxiety or hasn't experienced some form of it? So,
hmm
Megan, to begin with,
Yeah,
just tell me a little bit about yourself. What is your story?
sure. Yeah, my name's Megan. I am a coach. I live in Northeast Indiana and I've lived here my whole life. And I've kind of been anxious my whole life. It's been just part of my life, part of what got me to where I am today, I suppose. It started when I was young. I was a really sensitive kid. And I think I just absorbed everybody else's energy. And when you do that, it can make you pretty anxious. So that was really the story of my life. It started out as me just worrying a lot as a kid and turned into an anxiety disorder that I had until I was almost 40. I'm 49 and I'm happy to say it's been like 9 years of me being in a really good place of, yeah, feeling anxious sometimes, but really in a place where it's not a problem. And I guess my thought is always, if anxiety is not a problem, if it's not stopping you, if it's not anything other than something really uncomfortable, is it actually a problem? And it's not. Like my answer is always, it's not. And you can figure out how to lower that down so that you're not doing what I used to do, which would be spiral into anxiety attacks and panic attacks and, really just kind of being incapacitated by that feeling and figure out like, oh, okay, I know what's going on here. I've got this. I know how to shut it off and move on with my day. And that's really the trick. And that's what I help people do. I work with a lot of really high performing, I would say women in corporate areas, women who have really big goals, but they feel like they're working towards, whether those are at home or at work, trying to balance those feelings of having to be perfect, of having to work constantly and figuring out how to get where they want to go without being so in their heads and being overwhelmed and really hating their lives because they don't have any time for fun. And that's no fun.
Right. Yes, I agree with that. So, if you don't mind just diving just a little bit deeper into your own personal story, when
Mhm.
was it? I mean, it sounds like you started off as a little girl just having a lot of worries and probably stories made up in your head that was just running your life.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? And at what point did you wake up to that? And what did you do about it?
Um, it's funny. I remember being in third grade and I would worry my dad would go to these meetings, like a couple hours away, but he would have to spend the night. And I would worry when he was gone. I remember being a little girl and anytime he would go out of town, I wanted to go lay in the sick room at this little tiny school that I went to because I could sleep. And if I slept, wasn't anxious because I wasn't thinking. So I would want to go to sleep or I would just want to go home and be with my mom. So a lot of it was, I suppose now, like hindsight, it was probably separation anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, but I had friends. Like I did a lot of fun stuff, but it escalated when I got to middle school, which is really, really normal, especially for girls where their hormones kick in and suddenly they're a lot more anxious because their bodies feel really weird and they don't know what to do with it. And it really moved in from being anxious about little things like my dad that would go away to more focused on my health, really focusing on thinking I had every horrible disease under the sun. I remember sitting in our library at our school and reading an article about Ryan White if you're not from Indiana, you may not even know who Ryan White is, but he was actually on the cover of, I want to say Time magazine. It was the 80s, and he died of AIDS. And he was from Indiana. He was a hemophiliac. I mean, he got it from a blood transfusion. And if you're too young to remember this, once upon a time when you got AIDS, you died. Like not very long later, because we didn't know what was going on, right? We didn't understand anxiety. We didn't really pay much attention to mental health to begin with. And scary things happened. So being a Gen X kid that I was, there was a lot of scary stuff going on. And I absorbed all of it. And mostly it just reflected on me thinking I had all of these different diseases. And you're right. I spent a lot of time thinking and coming up with really scary stories about what was probably wrong with me. And I like to joke that I have had every disease under the sun and absolutely none of them. And that's really the way it was. And I could not break that cycle of thinking. And the weird thing about health anxiety, especially, is that it mimics OCD quite a bit, where you can't stop thinking, or you think you have a lump or a bump and suddenly you're like rubbing your neck all day. It's not OCD, but it presents very much like it. And so that was really my story. I mean, I got to the point where I was in college and I wouldn't shake anyone's hand because I was afraid I was going to get AIDS. I mean, it really irrational stuff. Like hindsight, I can look back and say, wow, that was a lot. That was kind of crazy. But in the moment, it feels very important and very real. And that's just where I spent about 30 years of my life. And that's far too long. Please don't do that. Yeah.
So was there any time in your life when you were young that you did have a major sickness or something that just opened your awareness to you can possibly have all these things, that you're not invincible?
No. Like literally no. I knew there was a little girl who went to my church. I was older than her. I was in high school when she was sick. I was already well into health anxiety, and that little girl got cancer. No, actually, my grandparents, like my parents are still alive. My siblings are alive. Everybody lives close. I mean, they live like not very far away from me. No, it was just, I would read a book or an article, or I would see something in a movie or something like that. And I would just, I don't know whether it was me absorbing their feelings or if it was me thinking that would be awful. I do think, because I've spent far too much time thinking about this over my lifetime, I do think it does go back to separation anxiety though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I would never want to, I would never want to get sick and make someone else sad. I would never want to get sick and die and make someone else sad. I don't know that it was ever actually in that moment, with lots of years of hindsight to my benefit. I don't know that it was ever that, but that's really the thing about anxiety, is that it's not rational and it doesn't have to make sense. And the more you try to make sense of it in the moment, the further you're going to go down the rabbit hole, the worse you're going to feel. And the more you're going to think, and the more you're going to feel. And that was really just what I did. I didn't have a way out of that cycle.
Wow, I can actually relate to a little bit about that. So, like before I had cancer, I just thought I was invincible. I was healthy and strong, like nothing could happen to me because I was healthy. And then bam, hit me like a, ton of bricks, like cancer.
Yeah.
Like, how could I get that? But then following my recovery, and during the recovery, it's like every little thing, every mole, every little, dry patch on my skin, ache, whatever. I thought, oh, what is this? And then I would go down that rabbit hole of Dr. Google and, finds an enormous, yes, so many things on there that I could diagnose myself with from Dr. Google, which is not very healthy.
No, Dr. Google is the Grim Reaper. It's terrible. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. But I just got to learn how to be in control of my minds and my thoughts, and just realize that there's no sense in worrying about what I don't know, and to just be able to release it. And for me, it helped to I'm going to the doctors every 6 months anyway, to the oncologist, just to write down a note. Hey, I'm concerned about this. Put it on a shelf. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to die from it between now and then. And I guess if I do, I do. But I can put it on the shelf. and bring it up with somebody
Mhm.
that is their profession, could really assist me with it if there is a cause for concern,
Mhm.
just to be able to, yeah, just allow that to happen, then to be in more of a moment. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Megan, what did you find really helped you get through it?
Yeah, it was well, when I was in the thick of it, there was very little that helped me get through it. It was basically waiting for it to move on to another some other thing to focus my brain on. The thing is that I graduated from high school, I went to college, I got married, I had kids, I did all the things, right? Like it was fine. I just knew that when I got triggered, I was stuck for a while. And my I guess my reassurance habit was always call my parents. If my mom told me I was fine, like she didn't want me to be sick, she didn't want me to die, she would tell me, go to the doctor. And she did get to the point where she was like, hey, you know what? You're going to worry about this until you go to the doctor and get it clear. So just go do it and get it over with. And that I think was actually a really good thing for me because I was so afraid to hear, yeah, you're right. And I never did. I never did. So for me, I had a lot of bad habits, reassurance, asking people over and over again, are you sure? Are you sure you think I'm okay? Like, dad, just tell me I'm crazy. I used to call my dad and beg him to tell me I was crazy, which is not a good coping skill, but it worked for me. Like, I called them so much and I would cry and I would Google more, just trying to find one little thing. But when you're anxious, your brain is going to fixate on what you don't want to see. So I would see those things and it would just get worse. But really, what changed everything for me was I was listening to an audio book one day, and it had nothing to do with anxiety at all. It was just actually it was you are a badass. Like I kind of wanted to be one, and I
Huh?
definitely wasn't at that point. I was taking a walk, and I remember her talking about how your thoughts really determine your reality. I thought that was a little weird. Like, why would that doesn't seem right to me because I've thought a lot of things that aren't true. And then she said, worry is wishing for what you don't want. And I stopped, like literally stopped walking in the middle of the road and was like, who would do that? Oh, me. I would do that for like 30 years. So I really was like, it was just one of those things where I like to tell the people that I'm working with, like, they say, how long this is going to take forever. Like, I've been trying forever. It's going to take forever. And I'm like, no, no, no. The process of healing is very much a hindsight thing, but the moment is instantaneous. It is that one thing that you're like, wait a minute. And then you're on to yourself. And that's when things starts to change. But just that one thought, that one little speck of insight into what it is that's keeping you stuck changes everything. And that happens just in a second. So I think for me, it was hearing that. And I was like, I don't have to believe everything I think. I, I knew. I knew rationally that that was true, but so many of my thoughts were anxious that just hearing somebody else say, no, you don't have to believe everything you think. I was like, you're kidding me. Because it's not, it's so
Yeah.
rational and anxiety is so not rational. So really, not listening to your thoughts is such a big deal for everybody. And I had this conversation with my son just the other day. I'm like, you know what? We think way too much, especially in the age that we're in right now. We have so much information at our fingertips. Our brains aren't designed to handle that. And I'm not saying please walk around and be stupid. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you don't have to take in all that information. And you certainly do not have to think harder about something all the time because you can really go into trust and you can trust yourself and you can trust what's going on around you and you can really trust your past because you're still here. And that was a big deal for
Right.
me.
Yes. So you bring up, oh, just not having to worry about certain thoughts and emotions. So how do you decipher between what is like true anxiety versus intuition? Just as a
Mm-hmm.
mom, I'm sure I know you're a mom too.
Yeah.
I am stuck with so many different fears and worries and different things of what's going on, but there has
Mm-hmm.
been a few times where I've been stuck with this thought like it's mother's intuition. So how have you learned to decipher the two?
Yeah. For me, and I'm guessing this is true for you too, is that anxiety is very loud and it's very fast and it's now, 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 now. And intuition is not. Intuition is certain. It is a pause. I would even call it a whisper. And it's there's no question. With anxiety, it's a what if this, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm right? What if this? And it feels like you have to do it right now. And intuition, you'd be like, no, just no. And it can be really difficult when you're in the heat of an anxiety attack or a panic attack to know that, but really to go into your body and out of your head, because your brain is a meaning making machine. So if you feel anxious, if you have those feelings in your body, and really being clear on where you hold those feelings in your body, whether it's your chest or your stomach or your throat or your arms or your legs, wherever it is for you, and just say, when I feel that, I know exactly what's going on. That is anxiety. And when I feel that, I'm not allowed to believe anything that I think. And I would venture to say that even in my most anxious, like really long anxiety attacks that would last for days or weeks where I just couldn't stop, I still knew the truth. I would just what if myself into a mess because those thoughts felt so important and so urgent. And I'm not saying that I never have anxious thoughts. I do. But now I'm like, oh God, I hate these. I'm glad I don't have to believe them because those are scary.
Have you had any experiences where you had your intuition saying something and you got to say, okay, is this anxiety telling me something, or is this really my intuition that's telling me that I get to do something?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, frequently. Life is decisions, a lot of decisions, and a lot of looking at situations. And I'm raising two teenagers. So every time they drive, right? Like every time my kid takes off in his car, is this anxiety or is this intuition? And a lot of times I'm like, it's definitely anxiety because I can feel it right here for me. It's very right here. And I'll be like, okay, what have like I can see him on Find My Friends. His car is moving. Everything is fine. Right. So whatever my thought is, check it at the door. And does it feel like I have to fix it right now? Like, do I think I need to get in the car and go find him? That's anxiety. But if it's one of those things where you're like, you know what? Something's not quite right. And you're like, where are you actually? Well, yeah, that feeling where it's like, that's your intuition coming through. And we really know the difference because because of where anxiety is. Whenever you feel that, that's a whole bunch of hormones that is shutting off the thinking portion of your brain. And when the thinking portion of your brain is off, your brain is the greatest nightmare. Like you could write amazing horror movies because it's all
So
fear
right.
based. It is. Yeah, it's all fear based. So really being able to go in and say, okay, when I calm down, when this feeling settles down in my body, then I'll revisit this. But a lot of times it's gone. It doesn't even come back. It's very fast. It's quick moving. And you'll notice that those anxious thoughts shift according to like, as soon as you prove one wrong, you've got another one right on its tail. Oh, it was probably this. Well, no, it's maybe this. It's just because of the feeling.
So as far as anxiety versus stress, how can
Mm-hmm.
you decipher the difference between those two?
Yeah, stress is like little anxiety vitamins. It charges it up. So really, I think that stress is very situational. It's very much a short-term situation. I mean, even short-term in the sense that this is going to take a week to work through, but we know there's a finite sense. Anxiety is very much a feeling in your body that you're like, I don't know what to do with this. It may come in out of nowhere. You may have gotten triggered, but it's not actually has to do with anything around you. Stress is like, you know what? They're laying off people at my job and I might get laid off next week and I'm totally freaking out about it. Stress and probably some anxiety with it, but it's very situational as opposed to and short term, like it's finite. So there's a stressful situation on, I have to handle this and it's making me feel anxious. That's true. Anxiety, if you're talking about more of an anxiety disorder, would be lasting longer. Anxiety disorders are especially if you have some like past trauma, like if you did have something that was really like stuck in your nervous system, it's very therapy based, right? Like let's work that out. But if we're talking about a feeling of anxiousness that comes up every time you're in this same, every time I have to go up and give a presentation to my boss, I feel like I'm going to throw up and then I go to the bathroom and cry. That's very situational anxiety. And that's more what coaching is good for. If there's somebody who has more of an intense trauma, whether it's whatever it is, whether it's some kind of thing from their past or they're in the middle of it, that's more of the therapy end. But I would say in terms of stress would be like, okay, what's going on in your life that's making you feel grouchy or tired. But anxiety is just like one step beyond stress, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I like how you bring in the question of what is it in your body that's making you feel just grouchy or tired. So I like finding the underlying things that's causing this,
Hmm.
right? Not
Hmm.
doing the
Hmm.
band-aid solutions. Let's find the underlying cause. Do you feel that having anxiety and feeling that worrisome and different things could be different parts of your body trying to communicate with you to give you a message of, say, something's wrong with hormones or your nutrition or just the way you're living? Is it a message for something?
Sometimes. There's so many good theories on this, right? Well, and the more I read, the more I read, the less I realize I need to know. And here's why I say that. Not because I don't think there are specific causes, because I think there are, but I think they're very specific to certain people. I'm 49 years old. I'm in the middle of perimenopause. I feel anxious because my ovaries are turning to dust. I mean, honestly, that is all that's going on. I know what it is. And I'm like, yeah. And some days it comes in out of nowhere. So for me, a lot of times right now, it's very hormone based. And that's really normal for a lot of girls going through puberty, women who are, I mean, who just had a baby. And then we have, perimenopause. We've got all of those different time periods where we know our hormones can. For other people, it can really be related to, I mean, maybe their thyroid is off and they're sensitive to how, it's messing with their heart rate. They're sensitive to how their heart feels. Their thyroid is messing with
Which
their
is all
hormones and
about
causing that.
hormones as well.
Right. It could be that their gut biome is trash and
Mhm.
they need to cut out sugar or gluten or dairy or whatever it is that's irritating them. Um, or it could just be that they're not sleeping because they're staying up too late and scrolling on Netflix all night or, watching Netflix or scrolling on TikTok, whatever it is that they're doing. It's so person to person, but I do think it does every time come back to what's going on in your body. How are you sleeping? Are you sleeping? Do you have a bedtime? Are you dehydrated? Is that why your heart rate is off? Do you eat like candy all day and then come home and have junk food? I mean, for yes, all of it, if that makes sense. Yes, all of it. But to say that it's one particular thing, I don't know that I think that's true. I think that unless you have something that is very in your face, like, no, I know what it is, then then yes, let's go with that. But I don't know that that means it's going to be the same thing for someone else. But I do think across the board, we do know there are certain things that when people do these things, they feel better. And that would be making sure that you're drinking enough water, making sure that you're eating good foods, like nutritious foods, making sure you get good sleep, making sure that you go outside and get exercise, all those things that we know we need to do to take care of ourselves. Um, but yeah, what's it for me may not be it for someone else. And that's why we got to find what's right for that person. Yeah.
Yes. So you really do an individualizing care with your clients to really tune in and ask them these questions to see if it's how are you eating? What are you eating? What type of
Hmm.
exercise, as far as just getting outside and
Yeah.
I mean the
Go look at the clouds with your
way,
feet in the dirt. Yeah.
yes, and the sleeping and just being able to be in
Hmm.
balance with your circadian rhythm of just
Hmm.
light and dark and not looking at light brights at nighttime or your phone first thing in the morning. Just look at that
Hmm.
sunrise coming up and that sunset and
Hmm.
just how much of just those what seems like the littlest things in life can
Hmm.
sometimes be just the biggest that really hold us firm and strong and healthy. So,
Hmm. Yeah. It really does. And it's funny. So many people, yes, they feel anxious, but it really is what you think. I mean, everybody can say, oh, I feel it. Let's just pretend we have 10 people and they all say they feel it right here. And they'll have 10 different stories about what's going on. So, whatever it was that made them feel that way, then they start thinking and making up stories based on their insecurities or what they fear will happen or what happened to them in the past or what they're afraid will happen to them in the future. All these different stories come from the same feeling. So, figuring out for them really, when did you start feeling this way? Like, what was going on in your life when you were feeling this way? Tell me more about that. Let's start talking about the ways that you can start taking care of your body. And it almost always starts with lowering stress. At least with the people who I generally talk to, it's like What's stressing you out? Well, I've got this going on in my life, or, this is happening with my parents, whatever it is that's happening. If we can lower the stress, they start self-correcting habits a lot of times on their own because they'll say, well, I saw this thing on Instagram and it really made me start thinking about this. I'm like, how often when you pick up your phone do you feel anxious? Every time. I'm like, what's going on in your life when you pick up your phone? Well, I feel stressed. So you're stressed out, you get on your phone, you scroll, you feel anxious, you put it down, you re-stress, you pick up your phone. It's just dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. So we really get stuck in these cycles where we know what it is, but we can't put our finger on it, and we're not thinking clearly again. So we go back to those things that make us feel, they give us that quick fix. And what I do is really help people figure out, okay, how are you sleeping? What are you doing before bed? What do you do when you wake up in the middle of the night? Do you pick up my phone? Well, you need to put your phone out of arm's reach, right? Like it's those little things that they'll tell me. Well, I mean, I know that I probably shouldn't eat like a bag of Skittles every day or picking on Skittles, but whatever it is that they're doing, well, I'm like, well, after you do that, how do you feel? I feel really shaky and sick. And then I get anxious. Ta-da! Right? So it's a holistic approach, yes, and it's different for everybody. So I think that, just knowing that one person might show up with this problem, another person's going to show up with this problem, and helping them figure out where it is and then solve it from there.
So you're talking a lot about just finding the trigger. What's the trigger that's causing that stress, that's causing that anxiety? So once one knows what the trigger is, but then they get that anxiety and stress anyway, do you have any remedies to just be able to just relax, or any type of like cognition theories to distract the
Mhm.
brain? What are some techniques that people can use?
Yeah. So for people who aren't sensitive to their breathing, this is usually person to person as well. Some people get really, really worked up about their breathing, but we do know that people who are anxious or stressed out tend to either breathe very shallowly or they tend to hold their breath. And they might just be walking around like, and they don't realize, and they're like, I don't know, feel like I'm out of breath. You've been holding your breath. So just starting with, okay, let's start with exhaling. And often you'll hear people say, oh, just breathe. And I'm like, well, they're breathing. We just need to change how they breathe. So to be able to say, hey, let's exhale. And let's just imagine squeezing you as flat as a pancake on your exhale. And I want you to squish all of that used oxygen out. And then I want you to breathe in really slowly. And then pause, exhale again, and then wait until you need to take another breath. For some people, that's right away. For other people, they're like, just give me a second, and just getting them to a place where they're breathing in a normal pattern, but really focusing on, now I want you to exhale really, really, really far. Okay, breathe in again, hold it, exhale really far. And getting them to focus on that exhale, it takes about 2 minutes, and that anxiety isn't in their body anymore. And then we can say, okay, what were you thinking about? What happened? Um, and for some people, honestly, if you are in a stage of life where you just had a baby, or you just, you went off of birth control, or you just are my age, whatever's going on in your life, or your thyroid is messed up, you may not have a trigger. I think we think that there's always a trigger, and that's not necessarily the case for everyone. I mean, the trigger really might just be you had a hormone surge. So to seek that out, I've actually done this myself where I'm like, why do I feel so anxious? And I'll have to think back, and I'll be like, got nothing. Like there's nothing happening. I could be walking. It happened one time at Target. I was walking around looking at throw pillows. Literally nothing happened. I was happy as can be. I had a day out by myself at Starbucks. Everything was great. And I'm like, what happened? Nothing. Nothing. It was just our bodies they're going to balance themselves out however they need. Sometimes that means your heart's going to beat a little faster when you stand up. And if you're sensitive to that, that's what it was.
So I've also heard that just having low blood sugar, people that go on different fasts and stuff, because your blood sugar goes so low that then your body goes to kind of the fight or flight response with those hormones, which bring in the adrenaline, which can cause that anxiety. So
Hmm.
I think sometimes, yeah, just taking a look at when was the last time I ate? When was that? And then
Hmm.
also looking at if you've had 5 cups of coffee, that could cause it too. Just huge doses of caffeine without food. So,
Hmm.
yeah, and then just looking at the hormones. So I like that you really look at what is the cause. So
Yeah.
besides just working with the breath, which I agree is huge, just to take that moment to just breathe, concentrate on your breath, and it does bring you back to the present moment. But besides breath work, what other treatments, just
Hmm.
holistically and medically, do you
Hmm.
recommend?
Yeah, for people who are sensitive to their breath, we don't go there. There are certain people they can't meditate because it's too much focus on their breath, and I get that. It's not for everybody. I'm big on movement. I'm really big on, you know what? That's fine. What you're going to do is you're going to turn on a song in your kitchen. You're just going to dance around your house. It's really, really hard to feel anxious when you're concentrating on dancing to your favorite song. Um, if you are, another thing that we can do is really good for a lot of people is you can do butterfly tap on your shoulders where you cross your arms and you go cross center line, one or the other. My kid likes to do it this way. He says it feels better if he does it on his jaw, but you can do it this way. As long as you're crossing your arms and going opposite side, it's great. Going outside, standing in the dirt or the sand or the snow. Put on socks if you're in the snow. Go outside in your socks and stand in the snow. Look up at the sky, and just looking up changes the way that the nervous system functions. So go look at the sky. Go outside and do that. Taking a walk is amazing. Anything you can do to move that energy out of your body to the point of even drinking coffee. I just did an episode on this not very long ago on my podcast about coffee does not make you anxious. Coffee gives you caffeine, which makes your heart speed up. And the way you think about that feeling is what makes you anxious. Because I drink tons of coffee, and that is not what makes me anxious. Coffee is not ever, it's made me feel shaky, but it's always like, whoa, I had way too much coffee. And it's just what you think about how your body feels. And when you can change the relationship with when you know your body so well that you're like, oh, that was way too much coffee, it doesn't make you anxious anymore. It doesn't matter. And that's really like kind of like full circle back. Like when you know your body, when you know yourself, then you can say, oh, this is anxiety. That was coffee. This was a blood sugar drop. My blood sugar drops all the time. Um, it used to drop, especially when I had PMS, if I would eat sugar without protein, specifically Starbursts, which is weird. If I would eat one Starburst and not have something else in my body, I would get so shaky. I was teaching at the time and I love pink starburst. But I would have one and I can remember having to leave the classroom and be like, you guys, I need to go get like a spoonful of peanut butter right now because I'm so shaky that I feel terrible. I'm like, just give me 2 minutes. I would go get a spoonful of peanut butter, come back, move on, and it was over. But yes, it does. It mimics panic. And if you're terrified of that feeling, you will spiral.
Right. So what about different medications? I've heard, just as simple as over-the-counter CBD to, those that we can get prescribed from doctors. What is your
Yeah.
take on medications?
I took medication for years, right? Like I'm never going to tell anyone not to take it. I think it's helpful. I think it serves a purpose. I think for some people it's very necessary. For other people, I think that it's a really great launch pad for figuring out how to change your reactions to how you feel because it does bring the feeling down and it makes it more tolerable. Um, and I don't think that everyone needs to be on medication. I don't think that nobody needs to be on medication. I think it's very doctor specific, but I do know that when you're on it and it brings that feeling down, it doesn't get rid of anxiety. It never once got rid of my anxiety. I don't know anybody that's ever been on medication that's like, felt fantastic all the time. I do think that it helps you say, okay, you feel that feeling where you feel anxious now. You're not going into an anxiety attack or you're not going into a panic attack. But yeah, it can get pretty intense. But now we've got some play. Like we've got some room to wiggle in there where we can say, okay, you feel that. It's really uncomfortable. but let's just sit in it for a minute. Don't try to make it go away. You know what it is. So let's just feel it and decide, let's get to know it a little better. Now, how do you want to react? Let's choose a new reaction. And then they can say, okay, let's figure out what works for you. Stand up and move. Try this breath thing. And, really having that opportunity to use the medication to their benefit to start changing how their brain is firing so that it can say, oh, in the past, my first thing was to get on Google and I would just Google my symptoms and then I would think I was dying. So I would go to the hospital. Whereas now we can say, okay, you've already done that. And that wasn't true. Let's do something else. And letting them start really growing those neurons in their brain in a way that's like, my old reaction is going to come back. My first response might be, I need to do something. And then you can create that pause to choose a new reaction. And every time you choose that new reaction, you are making that connection stronger and stronger and stronger, so that eventually you might be like, oh, wow, this is really intense. I feel like I need to do this thing, but I know this other thing works better. And when you do that, the anxiety goes away quicker. It doesn't have the same effect, and you're shortening the period of time and the intensity every single time. But it's really habit change as opposed to like, oh, I take this medication and it all went away. I just don't know anybody that's happened for.
Yeah, that's good. I'm happy
Yeah.
that you shared that, to be able to know that, because so many people are out there just looking for that quick fix, and usually medication is the first place that they go. But
It'll help. Yeah, it helps.
yeah,
100%.
to know that it's not really a fix all treatments and you're not going to feel anything anymore. That's
Right.
great to know.
Well, and that's also something that if you get too high of a dose of medication, you can't feel anything. And that's not helping you, because I did not know that for a long time. And I took like, I don't even remember, like maybe 20 milligrams of Lexapro, which I was like, I feel fantastic. But in all honesty, what I meant was I don't feel anything. And it felt so good as opposed to being anxious all the time. I was like, I would venture to say I was probably manic for 2 years, because I was like, go, 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 go. I don't feel anything. I feel fantastic. This is great. My mom was saying, Megan, something is not right. I'm like, no, I feel amazing. And when I went off of it, it was like an emotional catastrophe because I hadn't felt anything in 2 years. I was like, I got nothing. I can't cry. I can't do any of that. And I was thrilled with that because it had been so bad for so long. That's not good either, right? Like you're human. You're supposed to feel bad sometimes. You're supposed to feel anxious. You're supposed to feel guilt. You're supposed to feel shame. You're supposed to feel embarrassment, and you can handle it. But you have to learn how to handle it. And if you are taking so much medication because you don't want to deal with those things, I'm just going to challenge you that that's going to make everything harder on the back end. You have to learn how to feel uncomfortable things.
Right. So Megan, just if you have just a message for somebody out there that is really dealing with a lot of anxiety. I mean, maybe even to the point that they're just an introvert, don't want to leave the house because they have so much anxiety of going and talking to the neighbor next door. They're afraid to go to the grocery store and check out. They're afraid to simply just go through a drive-through and get food because they're so anxious about talking to that machine. What is a message that you can tell to them? Where can they get started? What can they do?
Yeah, especially from one introvert to another. I'm very much an introvert. Like I can talk to anybody. I am not shy at all. But when my social battery is out, I'm like, I'm out. I'm going home. So caution on if you are an introvert where you really do need to go home and be alone to recharge. I get it. Like I absolutely get it. I have a very short social battery. But if you are afraid of talking to people because you're afraid of what they think of you, what you'll say, how you might mess up, if you feel like you're going to throw up, if you feel like anything else, that is social anxiety. Yeah. And that is a lot different. And I'm just telling you, as a person who's an introvert, those two things don't have to be the same. You can be a very not shy introvert, and you can be a very quiet extrovert. My son is an extrovert. He's very quiet. He'll just sit next to you and hang out. But he's that. So if you are feeling really anxious every time that you have to go do something, let's start talking about, what are you really afraid of? What is it that you think is going to happen? And I've heard every story from I'm afraid if I leave my house that I'll get in my car and I'll get stuck in traffic and I'll pee my pants, or I will get lost and I won't know the directions, or I'll go out and somebody will think that I'm stupid. I mean, so many different stories, and it's really, really your story is as true to you as anything else. And we can just start finding the ways where, just because it feels really important and really scary and really true, to find the ways that it's actually not true. And then just find tiny little things that you feel like you could do. And we just take it really slow so that we don't freak your brain out, because
So,
it's going to, yeah, we don't want to freak your brain out. It's already freaked out.
yes, baby steps. So baby
Hmm.
steps are great. Just one simple step at a time. You don't have to go
Hmm.
right away. Even just getting in that car and going down the driveway, if that's as far as you get, that is a big first step.
Yeah. Yeah. Sitting in your car in your garage with the door locked and not even leaving the garage. I think because for some people, they're like, what if I can't get out? Well, let's just lock the door and see if you can. And then you can be on the phone with me. Yeah. It's just those little tiny things and starting to show yourself like, oh, you felt really anxious. That's okay. That's okay. Just notice that the story your brain told you was that you couldn't get out, but you did. So now that's like 1 point for you, 0 points for anxiety. Let's do it again.
Yeah, just to know it's okay. And as you began this conversation, this is normal.
It
Everyone
is.
has experienced some type of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
You're not alone in this. To be able to reach out and call you or me or some type of support, a friend to do
Mm-hmm.
something with you, we relate because more
Yeah.
often than not, we have all been there. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yes.
we have. It's very normal. I mean, it's on like that little emotion wheel that we give to kindergartners, anxiety. It's on there. It's a thing. And you're supposed to feel it because it's keeping you, in a very weird way, it's keeping you alive. If you were ever to get like chased by a saber-toothed tiger, it's very old and outdated. But it does serve a purpose, right? Like if there's something that's
Yes.
happening that where you need to react quickly, that's what it was designed for. It's just that it's out of date software. It's like an iPhone 2, right? Like you can't use it anymore, but it's still sitting there. You just don't know what to do with it anymore. Yeah.
Megan, what does it mean to you to radiate health and wellness?
Oh, I think radiating health and wellness is really doing what you need to do to take care of yourself and finding the places where you can get one tiny bit better and then bringing somebody else with you. So maybe it's like, gosh, you know what? I haven't worked out in 2 years and you decide to go take a walk. That day you were radiant because you did it. And I just think that the more you start doing those things, the more that those little habits start to change. And I think that's so important that, and maybe for one day it's taking a walk and maybe the next day it's going to sleep before midnight, whatever that is for you, those habits add up and those are really important.
Perfect. I've got one more question if you have
Yeah, go
time.
ahead.
So, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the drones that are showing up in New Jersey and some of the places over the United States, people are having a lot
Hmm.
of anxieties and fears of it's the unknown. We don't know what that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
What is your message to them? Like, how is a healthy way to handle this that's going on that all of us should be aware of at this point?
Yeah. Good question. First thing, I'm terrified of aliens. Um, like I was terrified of ET when I was a kid. I had this whole conversation with my parents last night. I'm like, I don't know, you guys. Like, I would rather have it be around than aliens, I think. But I don't think it's either. But I guess like if you're feeling anxious about that with the drones and whatever they are, wherever they are, I guess my question is because you did say it is uncertainty, but it's also control, right? Like, how do we control it? How do we how do we handle it? And we don't. I think going back to your point about when you were saying that you had all of these lists of symptoms or things like, oh, I have this scratchy past on my skin. Do I need to talk to my oncologist about this? And you're like, wait a second, I'm going to put this away and I'm going to handle it. Um, I think it's important to look at, these drones have been around for 3 weeks now.
I'm not sure.
So far, so good, right? So every day that it's like, okay, there they are, that's one more day that we have evidence that everything is okay. And the more that we're worrying about it, our worrying isn't going to make the drones go away. It's not going to get us the answer that we want. And at this point in time, what you can focus on is, how am I safe in my own body? How am I safe in my own world? How am I safe getting ready for the holidays? How am I safe doing this right now in this moment? Because because what's happening is we're looking for an answer to the unknown. We're looking to control it. And we're looking for like an answer for something that's outside of us right now. Right. And in the moment, in the future, in a day or 2 days or 5 days or 20 days or however long, maybe we'll have an answer. But for right now, you're just listening to a podcast and everything is okay. So if you can go back into that, and if you can go like, oh, wait a second, right in this moment, I feel really anxious about this, but I'm just in my house. I'm okay. So staying right in our lane, staying right in where we are right now, because everything in the future is out of our control. Everything in the past is outside of our control. But right now, we're good. We're safe. And really
Well, and
leaning
you're
into
talking
that.
a lot about control. A quote comes up to me from, I think it was Wayne Dyer, that said, there's no need to worry about what we have control over because we have control over it. And it makes no sense to worry about what we can't control because we don't have control over it. So there's no sense in worrying. Then the other
Yeah.
thing is, why make up the negative stories? Why not make a happy ending to it? I mean, if you're going to be
Right.
in your head making up some story, why not make it a happy ending? Like, it doesn't make
Yeah.
any difference until the reality shows up. So, why
Right.
not just put some positive energy out there and just have fun with it?
Right. Right. So whatever it is that you're thinking about, just remember that that's a guess. And it probably started with what if, and a what if is an anxious thought. And so every anxious thought you've had so far, I would say most of them, if not all of them, most of them, you're still here. Everything's okay.
Yeah. And think happy thoughts.
Yeah. I like
Yeah.
honestly, as afraid as I am of aliens, I started thinking last night, I'm like, they're probably smarter than us. Maybe they came to fix the climate. That was
Right.
my
We
thought
don't
switch. And I'm
know.
like, bring it. Come fix the climate for us. Creates a dumpster fire over here some days. So yeah,
Yes,
come on in.
exactly. Yes. Just a
Yeah.
positive
What if
thought.
they're great?
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Do not base your thoughts about the drones on Hollywood. They're out there to sell movies.
Beautiful. Well, is there any last messages, anything else that you want to share to the world today?
If you want to get in contact with me, my
Yes.
website is just my name. It's megandevito.com. And I have free consultations. So if you just want to say, oh my gosh, tell me what to do about this, that's great. Let's jump on a call and I'll walk you through it. We can figure out what's keeping you stuck and hopefully find a way for you to say, hey, that's something that I think I can do. And so that you can start to feel better. And please, 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 I read an article um, very long ago. It said the average person, I think it said they wait like 7 years before they ask for help when they feel anxious. Please don't do that, because the longer you spend feeling that way and doing those same habits over and over, the more those pathways are formed in your brain. And the sooner you decide that you're going to get help or you're going to figure out what to do, whether it's from a therapist or a coach or anyone else, the sooner we can start changing those pathways and the faster those changes happen. It doesn't happen. It doesn't take very long. I see changes with people in 3 weeks sometimes. It's amazing how fast it goes.
Yes, I definitely agree to be able to just get started because I have seen the opposite end where the positive side, a baby step, like we talked about, just one small step at a time. For those that don't get help or support or even want to acknowledge that they have anxiety, I've seen the opposite, that they have
Mhm.
baby steps going the opposite way, that it gets harder
Yeah.
and harder to talk to that stranger, to leave the house, whatever it is, to even answer
Mhm.
a phone call that from somebody that they don't know who it is, to write an email, that they just get more and more into that shell,
Mhm.
just so much in fear of just letting anxiety control them. So yes, the importance to just right now, if you're hearing this, to see your signs and symptoms, to know that this is normal. Everybody has experienced this, and to know that you can start right now, give you a call, contact you. Is it megandevito.com? And
Mhm.
yeah, let's start a clear path to get out of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yes. So,
Yeah.
megandevito.com. I'm sure you're on
Mhm.
Instagram, Facebook, right? Any other ways of
And
people can contact you?
yeah, I spend most of my time on LinkedIn actually. So if you are a LinkedIn person, you can find me there. If not, I do check my messages on Instagram and on Facebook, once a day at least. So yeah, you can find me there. I'm Coach Megan DeVito on all the social media sites, Threads, Instagram, Facebook. So, and Megan DeVito on LinkedIn. So
Yes. And you have your very own podcast as well,
I
which I've been invited to be a guest on. So, tell us about that.
Yeah, so my podcast is called More Than Anxiety, and I talk about more than anxiety. So I talk about anxiety a lot, and I talk a lot about stress, overwhelm, all the different ways it shows up. My episode that comes out tomorrow, which actually is December 17th, will be on grief, and it'll be on layoffs. Like if you get laid off from your job and all those emotions that come up, you can feel really anxious about losing your job, but how you're going to struggle with some grief and how we can process through that. So, I did a great interview with Laura Krause, who she shared a lot of great information. Talked about holiday anxiety. I've talked about all the different ways this might show up in your life. So it's a great resource if you're like, wait a second, what do I do about this? There's probably an episode for that. So that's called More Than Anxiety.
Okay.
It's on all the platforms and also on YouTube.
Perfect, Megan. Wonderful conversation. I
Thank you.
enjoyed all of your inputs and all of your knowledge on anxiety and what causes it
Mhm.
and how to deal with it. So, thank you very much
Yeah,
for coming on
you're
the
welcome.
podcast today. Much mahalo for joining in on today's conversation with Megan DeVito. I hope today's conversation has assisted you in feeling less overwhelmed and given you some tools that work for you to assist you in overcoming anxiety. But before I sign off, I'd like to invite you to check out my book, Discover the Adventure of You. This book was designed to assist you in working through these triggers, being mindful, and working through all of life's difficulties. It's a perfect tool for reflecting on your personal journey and exploring the core of who you are. So, as you head into the season, consider getting Discover the Adventure of You or my other book, Health Beams, as a gift for yourself. It's an invitation to dive deeper into your authentic self, honor your beliefs, and create space for growth and healing in your life. And if you feel like you deserve just a little bit more assistance with your health and wellness journey, I'd be honored to be your coach. Together, we can work to create balance, clarity, and a personalized path to living your healthiest, most fulfilling life. And you're always welcome to reach out to me at radiate.hw@gmail.com. Visit my website, radiatehealthandwellness.com. Connect with me on Facebook and Instagram, or simply leave a message below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, and stories. And if this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone navigating anxiety, please share this podcast with them. Just a small act of sharing can just ripple outward, offering insight, peace, and transformation to someone who is searching for it. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on future topics, my ongoing journey, and tools to help you create a life full of balance, gratitude, and wellness. So much mahalo for being here with me today. May you find the strength to rise above, the wisdom to let go, and the courage to honor your own truth. So until next time, take a deep breath, carry your light into the world, and radiate health and wellness in all that you do.